Welcome to winter at Boston Common, a place where Puritans would regularly hang people for not being pure enough. Hi, my name is Rebekah, and I work as a ghost tour guide in one of the most haunted cities in the southern United States. What am I doing up here in Boston? Catching a plane to London. But before I do that, let's find some ghosts during my 8-hour layover. Follow along with me for this special travel episode of Rebekah the Ghost Guide. When I travel, I always take public transit. What better way to get immersed in a city's culture? And it just so happens the closest subway stop to the Common is haunted. Lucky us. But before we get there, a little history. Did you know Boston has the oldest subway in the United States? And that Park Street station is part of the oldest route? So, who died here? To be honest, I'm not sure if anyone did. So, how is it haunted? My theory? Negative thought form spirit. These spirits never lived or died. They're just there. They survive off of the anguish of others, and they replicate the feeling. And any local will tell you that using the oldest subway in the States, built to hold a fraction of the people it does, regularly overcrowded, and with no way to fix it, that's a lot of negative energy over time. So don't be surprised if you hear a moan or a wail. It might just be there to make you a little bit more negative. Try and be patient, and good luck. Only footsteps from Park Street Station are the Boston Common. Established in 1634, this site served for public executions for over 175 years. When I first found this out, I asked, how could they turn this into such a pretty park? But remember, they do this all the time in historical cities. On my tour, I call it prime real estate. Nothing is to be wasted, so let's dive in. If you're ever to visit here, be sure to keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. If anything looks or sounds out of place, be sure to ask yourself just what you're taking in. It's understood that a number of Puritan victims, primarily women, are still seen walking these paths. But more on that later. Let's get a better idea of where we're situated. What's the story behind Boston? Settled by Puritans in 1630 as a way to escape English persecution for their beliefs, the Puritans were quick to settle their own state with their own strict rules. While flourishing as a colony, if you were not up to their code of conduct, you could wind up at the old hanging tree. Countless people had their lives cut short, for they, like the Puritans, would not walk away from their religious beliefs. That kind of murder stains a place. It laid tracks for many more years of bloody turmoil that is not secluded to this area or the Puritan time period. Only a block away from the Common is this unassuming brick house where Dr. George Parkman lived with his family in the mid-1800s. Parkman was a man who showed great promise even from a young age. He was a Harvard graduate and veteran of the War of 1812. Born to a wealthy family, Parkman was both thrifty and wise in his budgeting up until his death. He was commonly seen walking the Boston streets rather than owning a horse. A well-known face such as his collected a procession of thousands to his funeral following his sudden murder. He was found by a janitor at Harvard Medical School. His body had been dismembered and his body was burned. At one of the largest nationally covered trials of the time, another professor was found to be the murderer. Despite justice being served, Parkman is still seen walking the halls of the last place he lived in. Nothing could bring him what he wanted the most: his life. Back at the Common, I'll introduce you to another life that was cut short in the pursuit of academia and science. Her name was Maragaret Jones. She was a healer and medicine maker, something that was seen to distract from faith in Puritan eyes. It was ultimately a lie that led her to her hanging in 1648. A witch watcher claimed to spy a child running towards her, only to evaporate into thin air. Through pain and suffering, Margaret held on to her truth. She is one of so many who met their ends at this spot. To this day, you just might catch her trying to defend her innocence around this very area. Only a block from the old hanging tree is another well-known spirit who had more to say and do than their life allotted them to. The Omni Parker House, founded in 1855, remains as one of the most prestigious hotels in this part of the city. Much of this is in thanks to its hotel developer, Harvey Parker. In life, he was well known for being hospitable and very accommodating with his guests, and his hotel. His death in 1884 would hardly change his dedication to this grand hotel. To this day, he is most commonly seen on the 10th floor annex, but you may very well catch him in passing, wishing you a pleasant day. It's not surprising that the Omni Parker House remains America's longest continuously operating hotel. My last story at Boston Common is one that is a little personal for me. It's a story of a woman who is still seen walking the area, wearing colonial dress and often in tears. Her name is Mary Dyer, and my connection with her comes from a common community of Quaker beliefs. Granted, I relate to a far more open-minded sect of Quakerism than what existed in Mary's day, but the core beliefs of peace, integrity, and equality have always remained the same. Mary was hanged at the same great elm tree that stood here till the storm took it down in 1876. She was murdered in 1660 by the same people who came to America to practice religious freedom. To this day, she can be seen heard crying, not just from her own fate, but for so many lives cut short due to religious prejudice. She is now honored with a statue at the State House. To end this episode, I couldn't imagine a better location than this, King's Chapel Burial Ground. Only a few blocks from Boston Common, you'll find the oldest burial ground in the city. It was established in 1630, the same year the Puritans came to settle the area. Since then, there has been plenty to keep the spirits up rather than keep them at rest. This used to be a common site for grave robbers, for example. At least one woman was beheaded so that she would fit into a snug coffin, and a number of people may have unknowingly been buried alive. Lastly, as icing on the cake, the tombstones have been moved no less than 2 times. So much for resting in peace. Thank you for following me around just a small area of historic Boston. All of these sites can be easily visited in one day, and I highly recommend talking to the folks at the Freedom Trail Visitor Center if you're looking for more information. As for me, I'm going to get inside before my southern coastal climate body freezes. Thank you again for following me along, and let me know what you thought of this episode below. Lastly, if you want to see more, consider subscribing to this page and giving to my filmmaking fund. Each episode takes an average of 10 hours to make, and right now the series is me primarily editing around my other day jobs. I can't wait to give you more ghostly content. Thanks again. I'm Rebekah, the Ghost Guide.